Hi, fourth graders. Welcome back. Today we're going to look at lesson 8.2, which is called multiples of fractions. Now, yesterday in 8.1, our objective was to write a fraction as the product of a whole number and a unit fraction. Today, our lesson objective will be to write a product of a whole number and a fraction as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. So let me make sure that we're clear on what we're going to do today. Let's start with a problem. We're going to go ahead and unlock the problem. So let me read it for you. Jen is making 4 pans of baked ziti. For each pan, she needs 2/3 cup cheese. Her measuring cup can scoop 1/3 cup of cheese at a time. How many scoops of cheese does she need for 4 pans? We're getting a little more complicated. So let's see if we can create a model to help us. So I'm going to go back in my problem and I'm going to underline some information. First of all, let me get a different color here. Okay. I know that Jen is making 4 pans of ziti. For each pan, she needs 2/3 cup cheese. So I know that I need 2/3 of cup cheese for each pan. Now, my measuring cup can only scoop 1/3 of a cup of cheese at a time. So what I'm trying to find out is how many scoops of cheese am I going to need for 4 pans? How many scoops needed for 4 pans? All right, my model. At first I'm going to think 2/3 is 2 1/3 size pieces. So I've taken my model and I've created a model to show 1/3. 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And I'm going to think 2/3 is 2 of these 1/3 size pieces. So I'm going to write 2/3 equals what plus what? You're right. 1/3 plus 1/3. I can think of that as 2 times, you're right, 1/3. So this would be the amount of my pan. That would be with the cheese. Now, what I know is there are 4 pans of baked ziti, and each pan needs 2/3 of a cup. So how can I take my model and make my model work for me? Well, let's see if we can't do this. I'm going to go ahead and create a model, and as I create my model, I'm going to create 4 bars that look just like this. So here's my first bar. Here's my next pan, cut into thirds. Here's my third pan, and here's my fourth pan. Now, this is the amount of this is the amount of the number of cups of cream cheese I need. Let me go ahead and mark those. All right, boys and girls, so what I did is I used just a shading, and I used a chevron pattern, diagonal lines going back and forth. So the first thing is I'm going to think of my first pan, so I'm going to think of this. I have 1 pan. Maybe my pen doesn't want to work. I have 1 pan. Hold on. So let me say this again. So I've taken 2/3 and I've gone ahead and I've I've shaded them out. So what I want you to look at is that what I've shaded out is 1 pan equals 2 times 1/3 equals 2/3 of a pan. And I will need to have 2/3 cups of cream cheese. Now let's take a look at the next. Now I'm looking at 2 pans, and I say 2 pans times 2 cups, 2/3 cups to 1/3 cups of cream cheese equals 2 times 2 is now 4. 4 times 1/3 equals, you're right, 4/3. All right, let's go ahead and see what happens when we add a 3rd pan. Now I have 3 pans, okay? So 3 pans equals 3 pans times 2 times 1/3 per pan equals 3 times 2 is 6 times 1/3. And 6 times 1/3 equals, yes, 6/3. All right, everybody with me? Let's go ahead and add our 4th pan. All right, here's where we've added now 4 pans. When we add our 4th pan, our multiplication sentence now becomes 4 pans times 2 1/3 pieces per pan times our unit fraction of 1/3. So our multiplication sentence now becomes 8 times 1/3. 8 times 1/3 is 8/3. So, boys and girls, let's see if we can't take what we've done here and create a number sentence. So we started out with 4 pans times 2/3 cups of cheese per pan. That equaled 4 times blank times 1/3, which was going to equal 4, sorry about that, 4 times 2 times 1/3. 4 times 2 would equal, oops, got a mistake here, let me erase that. 4 times 2 equals 8 times 1/3, and 8 times 1/3 equals 8/3. So Jen will need how many 1/3 size scoops for cheese for 4 pans of ziti? Jen will need, you're right, 8 1/3 size scoops. Of cheese for 4 pans. Now in this situation, boys and girls, we've used a model, and then we've created a multiplication sentence. And we've created the model in the multiplication sentence talking about a product. How can we use a model to write the product of 4 times 2/3 as the product of a whole number and a unit fraction? All right, let's go on. I'm going to try another one. All right, boys and girls, today we're going to take a look at multiples. So far you have learned to write multiples of unit fractions. If you can write multiples of unit fractions, you can also write multiples of non-unit fractions. So in our example today, example 2, we're going to use a number line to help us write multiples of 2/5. So we're going to take a look at this. The first thing we're going to think of is when I multiply 2/5, I multiply it by a counting number. So I want you to look at our number line here. In our number line, we're going to move from 0 on the left to something way over here on the far right. We're going to actually count up the number line in increments of 2/5. So let's take a look. First we're going to do is going to say 1 times 2/5 equals 2/5. 2 times 2/5 equals, you're right, 4/5. Make our third jump. 3 times 2/5 equals 6/5. I want you to stop right now and I want you to look at what's happening to the numbers on our number line. What's happening to the denominators? Yes, they're all staying the same. What's happening to the numerators? Yes, they're increasing by 1. Please note that on the number line you see big heavy dots for every incremental jump of 2/5. So 2/5, 4/5, 6/5. 4 times 2/5 would be what, boys and girls? You're right, 8/5. And 5 times 2/5, boys and girls, by the time I make the 5th jump, 5 times 2/5 would be what? You're right, 10/5. 5 times 2 equals 10, and of course our denominator does what? Always stays the same. So the multiples of 2/5, boys and girls, would be 2/5, 4/5, 6/5, 8/5, and 10/5. What's happening is we are multiplying our whole numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by the fraction 2/5. This is a non-unit fraction. Why is it not a unit fraction? Because the numerator is not 1. All right, let's see if we can do this. All right, boys and girls, we're going to take a look. In this situation, we're going to write 3 times 2/5 equals 6/5. We're going to write 6/5 as the product of a whole number and a unit fraction. Please take a look at the number line. Now, as we're working on this number line, what I'd like you to do is, let's see what we can do here. So 1 times 1/5 equals, oops, I'm sorry, it was supposed to be done. 1/5. 2 times 1/5 equals 2/5. 3 times 1/5 equals 3/5. 4 times 1/5 equals 4/5. 5 times 1/5 equals 5/5. 6 times 1/6 equals 6/5. So I can write 3 times 2/5, which equals 6/5, or I can actually say that 6/5 equals 6 times how many fifths? 1/5. So I'm taking 3 times 2/5, which I know is 6/5 up here, and I'm writing 6/5 as the product of a whole number and a unit fraction. 6/5 is the product of the whole number 6 times the unit fraction 1/5. So I've gone from a whole number to a fraction, which is a non-unit fraction, to an improper fraction, to a whole number times a unit fraction. I hope I haven't lost you here. Let's see if we can try this. So I'm going to ask you to write the next 3 multiples of 3/8. Here we go. Number 1. Write the next 3 multiples of 3/8. That's right. The multiples of 3/8 are, ooh, that's horrible, Mrs. Kennedy. Let me stop you. That's right. The multiples of 3/8 are 3/8, 6/8, and 9/8. I bet you could continue. All right, so here are some practice problems. I'm going to ask you to answer the question, what is 5/12 written as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. And your second problem tonight is to list the next four multiples of 4/5 and 3/8. Bye now.